So this is what it likes when a MMA fighter strikes with a boxer. Who would have thought? Bro turned that into a real fight real quick. Bro like questioned the entire existence of boxing in that very moment. He's like, I'm gonna take brain damage and I can't even use my entire body? I can't throw kicks and elbows and knees, and you think I'm gonna accept this brain damage? Come here, roundhouse. And where did this fight take place? You guessed it, in Thailand, not Russia. But the guy that threw the head kick, in the comments they're saying that he is Russian, so always the Russians changing up the game, whether it be knocking each other out in the press conferences or choking them out in the press conferences or attacking them during interviews or, well, that was a Polish guy, or now head kicking boxers in a boxing match. And it was a nice head kick too. Good form. I mean, we gotta take some points away for grabbing the ropes, but the kick was smooth, good technique, good form, very fast, and even angled it the right way because his opponent was moving out to his own right side, which is into the left kick of this guy. Bro planned it and timed it perfectly in a boxing match. And it looks like the reason why he threw the high kick was because he was losing the fight. He missed a big hook. His opponent blitzed him down with the left hand, backed him up into the ropes. I mean, that guy looked like he might have been getting outclassed. And then he had to ult, right? He had to throw out his finishing move. Every moment is a monologue in his head. Wow, he's so fast. How did he evade that punch? I timed it perfectly. Maybe instead of pressuring forward, I should back up, create some distance. Ugh, his speed is incredible. The length of his arms. That 3-inch reach advantage is really helping him. I'm exhausted and he's spinning around me. I have to throw it. My finishing move.
Crow cop kick.
Conor could have easily have done that against Floyd Mayweather, or Anderson Silva versus Jake Paul, or a lot of these other great well-rounded strikers against these boxers. And it just goes to show you, man, MMA fighters are better. Now, of course, you shouldn't be throwing head kicks in boxing. The opponent doesn't know that there's going to be any kicks. Neither of you agree to any of that, so you shouldn't be throwing it. But at the same time, you know, people are saying, oh, but he didn't know that he was going to throw a head kick. Even if he did, he wouldn't defend it. He doesn't know how to defend a head kick. And it kind of goes into the whole thing about if they, they had a street fight. Neither of them trained for each other. An MMA fighter versus a boxer. What is the boxer going to do when the MMA fighter throws a head kick? They've never seen one before, or they never fought against someone who threw a head kick at them before. They're going to drop their hands just like this boxer did because they see the strike coming up from a low range. They're going to drop their hands to that instinctively because they're trying to defend themselves. They think it's going to be something to the body or, it's like an unknown attack. They don't know how to defend against it the right way. So he gets head kicked, dropped his hands, chin open, KO'd. And with shoes too, man. It reminded me of Pete Williams fighting Mark Coleman, kicked to the mouth with shoes on. And people try to say that Daniel Cormier will lose to Mike Tyson. The best fighters in the world are MMA fighters. Every other combat sport is limited compared to MMA. If an MMA fighter goes into boxing, it's a limited version of his sport. And if they open it up, right, they allowed more stuff, they allowed more kicks and takedowns and anything else, the MMA fighter wins. This goes for every single other combat sport. In wrestling, allow some boxing, allow some punches, some kicks and elbows, whatever it is, the competition completely changes. In MMA, the only thing you can open that up to is like low blows and back the head shots and, multiple people fighting and weapons and all that sort of stuff, right? In fact, besides the weapons and multiple people, if you open up all the groin shots and eye pokes and all of that, the MMA fighter is actually even more dangerous in a street fight. He's even better and harder to defeat because he can do those techniques better than anyone else can. When they say that in an MMA fight, they're protected by the rules, no, it's the other guy who doesn't do MMA that's protected by the MMA rules. If a boxer went into MMA, he's not going to say, the MMA fighter is only going to win because the rules are helping him. No, if they allow back of the head shots, you know what that MMA fighter would do to the boxer? He will take him down, back mount, and start elbowing the back of his head. Take him into north-south, pause, and start kneeing the top of his head. Gets into the full guard and starts headbutting. Like, MMA fighters get way more dangerous the more rules you take away. Until the point that there's like weapons and stuff, that's a completely different thing. But boxers, for the most part, I'm not going to say they can never win, but for the most part, on average, they're not beating an MMA fighter. And that just shows you the difference on how quickly an MMA fighter can win a fight against any boxer. And these two guys aren't even high level. I mean, can you imagine like if Islam Makhachev fought against Canelo Alvarez or something, It'd be the exact same thing. And do you know what the funny thing about this is? Dylan Dennis had that moment in his Logan Paul fight. Remember when he shot a takedown in the boxing match and he went for the guillotine and Logan just defended all of it? Or should I say Dylan Dennis didn't really know how to shoot a takedown at all. In fact, Logan Paul's the better wrestler of the two. No, but for real, in a boxing match, you can't be throwing head kicks, right? Don't be throwing elbows, head kicks, knees, even if you're losing the fight, You agreed to fight in a certain way. And in this one, it was just throwing punches, right? It was just boxing. But over there in Russia, man, they make up their own rules. So Well, like I said before, these guys are smoking each other in the press conferences, so they're not going to lose at any cost, even if it means a disqualification, which isn't technically a loss. And it puts into perspective, like, who the baddest man on the planet is. You know, whenever they say that, they like to look at boxers, or at least they used to. No boxer is the best fighter in the planet. No boxer is the most dangerous fighter in the world. If you put the best boxers in the world, right, and scale them to the best kickboxers, the best MMA fighters, the best wrestlers, they're at the very bottom. Not only do they not beat the best MMA fighters, of course, but they don't even beat the best kickboxers. They don't beat the best wrestlers. They don't beat the best Muay Thai fighters. Boxing is the most limited form of fighting in the world. Oleksandr Usyk, as much as I love Usyk, I love watching his fights, he's one of the best heavyweights of all time. Can you imagine him fighting Gable Stevenson, or Tom Aspinall, or John Jones, or even Alex Pereira, or Gordon Ryan, any of these guys? He doesn't have a chance of beating any of them, besides a puncher's chance. The only thing about boxing, and this is true with all martial arts, this is true with all combat sports, the most famous fighters, the most famous sport is always going to be way overhyped in their abilities. Boxing has superstars, but those superstars are not nearly as good as even a bottom 100 ranked fighter in MMA. Like Devin Haney, for an example, one of the best boxers in the world, like maybe top 20 in the world right now. He would lose to Artem Lobov in a fight, or even put him against a flyweight like Matt Schnell, right? Matt Schnell kind of just retired, but he would destroy Devin Haney in a fight. There are literal lightweights in the UFC that can beat heavyweight boxers in a fight. Imagine Islam Makhachev trying to fight Oleksandr Usyk, or even Anthony Joshua. He would beat these guys. One takedown, that fight's over. A few calf kicks, and that fight is won by the MMA fighter. Not even that, even some of the fighters over the weekend would destroy the best boxers in the world. We have to stop comparing boxers and MMA fighters. It's not even close. It's not even close. It's better to compare them to kickboxers or wrestlers or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu fighters, you know? And even at that, the best boxers don't even beat the best of those martial artists. So the thing about boxing, it's had a lot of money for a very long time. It's got superstars, it's got fighters that are known throughout the world, but fame creates an illusion, and a lot of those fighters, they're good for their combat sport, right? But once you start expanding that out into who is the actual best fighter in the world, they're not even close to the top 100. The best boxer of all time is not even in the top 400 best fighters in the world when you go through all combat sports. And that might even be generous, honestly. You can argue the top 1,000 best fighters in the world, not even a single boxer's in that. Majority of them are going to be MMA fighters. You have some wrestlers, you have some Muay Thai fighters, some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu fighters. You're not going to see a boxer. They're way too limited in what they can do in a fight. And everything they do is countered by the other martial artists. They're completely countered by a wrestler. They don't know how to defend a takedown. They're completely countered by the kicks of a kickboxer and a Muay Thai fighter. And in the clinch. Boxers are in the clinch all the time, but they get manhandled by a Muay Thai fighter easily. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, even though they're not the best wrestlers for the most part, they're not the best with takedowns, they learn takedowns though. They learn how to shoot takedowns. Boxers don't. So even with their limited wrestling skills, they're still way ahead of boxers' ability to defend takedowns. And if the fight's on the ground against anyone who's good at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, that fight's over. Not even just good. Anyone that just knows a little bit. They know like an armbar, triangle, how to get into full guard and transition out of that, the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guy is going to win that fight. It's really good for someone to know self-defense, right? If they learn boxing, it's probably the best martial art to defend themselves against multiple attackers at once, just because the attacks are really fast. Boxers have some of the best footwork out of any martial art. Boxing, wrestling, and Muay Thai are the best self-defense martial arts you can learn, but when you're fighting the other best fighters in the world that are all trained, boxers are the lowest tier.